Here's the issue. You've heard about the digital divide or the education divide, where there's a large gap between those who have access and those who don't. Well, what you rarely hear spoken about is the food system divide, where there's a large gap because just a few crops receive the majority of the support. The R&D efforts, the policy support, the big company investment, even the development aid. And just a few crops, like the big three, rice, wheat and maize, have had huge investments for decades. And so the divide becomes larger. And the cycle goes like this. There is the initial investment. Now this can lead to improved varieties, and so increased yields. And so farmers have more profits. So more is invested in infrastructure and also more products created. So the whole value chain is more developed, more money is made, and this leads to even more investment. And the cycle continues and the divide gets bigger. Well, so what? You could say, so what if we have a food system divide? Well, we know there is a need for more diversified diets, especially among the poor. We know that there is a value of having diversity on farm. It's better for the environment and it's better for withstanding natural shocks. We know it's not just hunger that's a problem, it's hidden hunger, the high levels of malnutrition. And we know climate change is real. It is getting hotter and we will have more droughts and floods. The International Monetary Fund had said one estimate shows that 40% of the land growing maize currently in sub-Saharan Africa in just 30 years will no longer be suitable for maize because of climate change. That's almost half the area. Crops that are hardier, survive in hotter climates and grow with less water are going to be critical for the future of our food security. But do you realise what we've created? With this food system divide and the support of just a few crops, it means we have significantly reduced our chances of coping and managing some of the biggest global issues. From diet diversity, malnutrition, climate change, environmental degradation, water scarcity. Here is just one example of many. When I was in eastern Kenya recently, and I visited farmers in some dry arid areas, and they were growing maize that survived 1 in 4 years. So 3 and 4 years they didn't have a crop. So why would they do that? So I asked them and they said, it's just easier. Somebody comes to the farm gate and sells the seed. Somebody comes to the farm gate and buys the grain. So the value chain is well developed. Well, they used to grow millets, including sorghum, that were hardy crops needing little water. Then, during difficult economic times, the government gave maize as a free food aid. So people became used to eating maize, and they started to grow it as well. But this was a semi-arid area, and hence maize survived only 1 in 4 years. Now, a couple of generations have passed, and people don't know how to cook the millets. They don't know what it tastes like, and so the millet value chain hasn't been developed. There is a solution. We need to break the food industry divide. We need to learn from the successes of the big three. We have to mainstream more foods, so we have more diversified diets, healthier diets, more sustainable diets, that is sustainable on the natural environment. What we need to do is select a few foods and invest like crazy. And I really believe the first one we need to start with is millets. Why millets? because millets are a smart food. So what is smart food? Well, you've probably heard of superfood. Well, smart food goes a lot further. Smart food have 3 criteria. Number 1, it's good for you, so it's highly nutritious. But also, number 2, it's good for the planet. For example, it's got a lower water footprint or a low carbon footprint. And 3, it's good for the farmer, especially if we can develop the value chain. It's hardier, or it's got greater potential to increase yields, or it's got untapped markets and multiple uses. Now, millets are an amazing smart food that very few people know about outside of India and some parts of Africa. So millets are good for you. Millets tackle some of the biggest micronutrient and health issues. Pearl millet is high in iron, one of the top 3 most common micronutrient deficiencies globally. And bioavailability studies have shown that a meal of pearl millet will provide the average person's daily requirements of iron and zinc. Millets have a low glycemic index, so are really important for preventing and managing diabetes. Finger millet has 3 times the amount of calcium than the equivalent of milk. Kodo millet is particularly high in fibre, having 3 times the amount of total dietary fibre than wheat or maize, and 10 times that of rice. Millets are also high in protein, having at least the equivalent of milk, and pearl millet having double the protein that equivalent of milk has. Also, millets are high in antioxidants and are gluten-free. So millets are good for you. Now they're also good for the planet. The water footprint of millets is very low. They use 30% less water than maize, 70% less water than rice. Millets also grow faster. This puts less stress on the environment. For example, millets mature in about half the time of wheat. Millets also grow on minimal fertilizers and pesticides. This is better for the environment and results in a lower carbon footprint. So millets are good for the planet. Now they're also good for the farmer, especially if we can develop the value chain. Millets can survive in dry, hot conditions and are typically the last crop standing in times of drought. With climate change, the drylands are likely to become hotter and have more droughts, making millets more critical as a crop. While other major crops have basically reached a yield plateau, millets have had a lot less investment, so have a much larger potential to improve yields. Many millets have the potential to increase yields 3 times their current level. There are also multiple uses for millets. Stalks are used for fodder, grains for human consumption. They're used as a biofuel. They're used in brewing and many other uses. There are many untapped markets for millets, so the potential for growth is great if we can develop the value chain. So in conclusion, let's break the food system divide. Let's invest like crazy in smart food. And let's start with millets.